Hey friend, yes, you right there, watching this with tired eyes and a heavy heart. Maybe you're a single parent scraping by, or maybe you've been hurt so deeply that trusting anyone feels impossible. Whatever brought you here tonight, I want you to stay with me until the very last word. Because this isn't just a story about a single dad in Columbus, Ohio. This is a story about you. About the moment life offers you an envelope of hope and a whisper that says, you're not alone anymore. Lean in. Breathe. Let's walk through it together, chapter by chapter, until the end, when that same whisper reaches straight into your soul and reminds you why kindness is the bravest thing any of us will ever do. Nathan Carter had learned to measure his life in small victories and even smaller defeats. At 35, he still woke up every morning reaching for the empty side of the bed where Emily used to sleep. 3 years had passed since the car accident stole her, but the silence in their little rented house on the east side of Columbus still felt fresh. Sophie, his 8-year-old miracle with Emily's same freckles and wild curls, was the only reason he kept moving. She needed breakfast, she needed shoes that didn't pinch, she needed to believe her daddy could still fix anything. He fixed things for a living now, leaky faucets, sagging porches, broken fences, whatever paid the electric bill before it got shut off. The truck was older than Sophie, the toolbox rattled like loose bones, and some nights Nathan sat on the tailgate after Sophie fell asleep, staring at the stars and whispering the same question to the dark. How much longer can I keep pretending I'm okay? The storm that changed everything rolled in on a Tuesday that smelled like rain and regret. Nathan had been driving home from a half-day job when he saw her, Claire Donovan, standing in her front yard in the pouring rain, soaked to the bone, trying to hold up a section of her privacy fence that the wind had torn loose. She was shouting at the sky, not in anger but in pure exhaustion, the kind that comes when life has already taken too much. Something in Nathan wouldn't let him drive past. He pulled over, killed the engine, and jogged through the sheets of rain. "Ma'am, let me help before that whole thing comes down on you." Claire looked up, mascara running, eyes wide with the kind of distrust that only betrayal can carve into a person. She had just finalized her divorce 6 months earlier. Her husband of 12 years had emptied their savings and left with his secretary, leaving her with a house she could barely afford and a heart that no longer believed in good men. But the fence was about to crush her rose bushes, and this stranger was already lifting the broken panel like it weighed nothing. For the next 2 hours they worked side by side in the storm. Nathan used rope from his truck to brace the fence, then drove stakes deep into the mud so it would hold until morning. Claire handed him tools without a word at first, but slowly she started answering his gentle questions. She told him her name. He told her his. She learned he had a daughter waiting at home. He learned she hadn't slept through the night in months. When the wind finally died down, Claire disappeared inside and came back with an envelope. Her hands were shaking. "This is for the fence, and for stopping when no one else would." She pressed it into his palm. Nathan tried to refuse, his pride had kept him alive this long, but she wouldn't take it back. Then she leaned in close, rain dripping from her lashes, and whispered the words that would haunt him for weeks. "I don't just need the fence fixed, Nathan. What I really want, is to believe again. In people. In kindness. In something, anything, that doesn't break." She stepped back quickly, as if the confession had burned her tongue, and hurried inside without another word. Nathan stood there in the driveway, envelope growing heavy in his wet hand, heart pounding louder than the thunder that was finally moving east. That night he sat at the kitchen table after Sophie was asleep and opened the envelope. Inside was far more money than any fence repair had ever earned, enough to cover 2 months of rent and still buy Sophie the new backpack she'd been too embarrassed to ask for. His first instinct was to return it. Charity felt like failure. But then he remembered Claire's whisper, the raw ache in her voice, and something shifted inside him. Maybe this wasn't charity. Maybe this was a beginning. The next morning he drove back to her house before the sun was fully up. The fence still needed proper repair, and he couldn't sleep knowing it might fall again. Claire opened the door in a robe, eyes puffy from crying. She hadn't expected him back. But when he told her he'd come to do the job right, no extra charge, she let him stay. As he worked, they talked. She told him about the divorce papers that still sat in her drawer like open wounds. He told her about the hospital room where Emily had taken her last breath and how Sophie still drew pictures of Mommy in heaven every night. The stories poured out like the rain the day before, washing away the careful walls they had both built. By the time the fence stood straight and strong again, Claire had made a decision. She wrote him a check for materials and labor, another generous amount, and then whispered something else, "Come back tomorrow. There's an old shed in the backyard that needs the same kind of fixing, and maybe I do too." Nathan drove home that afternoon with money in his pocket and a strange warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. But pride is a stubborn thing. That night Sophie asked why Daddy was smiling more, and he almost told her the truth. Almost. Instead he tucked her in and stared at the ceiling, wondering if accepting help from a broken stranger made him weak, or finally brave enough to heal. Little did he know, Claire was doing the same thing across town, sitting on her porch with a cup of tea gone cold, replaying his quiet strength and wondering if she had just opened the door to the very thing she feared most, hope. The days turned into weeks, and the jobs kept coming. First the shed, then the leaky roof, then the cracked driveway that needed sealing before winter. Each time Nathan showed up with his toolbox and his quiet steadiness, Claire found herself waiting on the porch with coffee already made the way he liked it, black, 2 sugars. She told herself it was just gratitude. He told himself it was just work. But their hearts knew better. Sophie started coming along on Saturdays. At first Claire was nervous around the little girl. Children had a way of seeing through every defense, but Sophie's easy laughter melted her. They planted flowers together while Nathan worked. Claire taught Sophie how to braid hair the way her own mother once had. Sophie taught Claire the secret handshake she and her mom used to do. Slowly, the house on the quiet street stopped feeling like a museum of past pain and started feeling like a home again. Nathan's challenges didn't vanish overnight. The landlord still knocked when rent was late. Sophie still had nightmares. And some nights Nathan sat in his truck after leaving Claire's and cried because he missed Emily so fiercely he could barely breathe. But something new was growing beside the grief, purpose. Claire paid him fairly, never like charity, and she always whispered the real reason behind each job. This isn't just about the roof, she'd say softly. It's about proving to myself that good men still exist. Or, fix the porch so I can sit outside without feeling afraid of the world again. Claire's own walls were crumbling too. She had spent a year after the divorce convinced that every kindness came with a price. But Nathan never asked for more than the work was worth. He never pushed. He simply showed up, day after day, with calloused hands and gentle eyes. One evening, after he'd stayed late to help her hang new curtains because she was scared of the ladder, she broke down in the kitchen and told him the full story of her marriage, the lies, the empty bank accounts, the night she found out about the affair while 7 months pregnant with a baby that never made it to term. The miscarriage had been the final crack that shattered everything. Nathan didn't offer empty words. He simply pulled out his wallet and showed her a photo of Emily on their wedding day. I know what it feels like when the future you planned disappears, he said. But look at us. We're still here. Still fixing things. Still breathing. That's gotta count for something. That was the night everything changed. Claire walked him to his truck under a sky full of stars and handed him one last envelope. Inside was a contract, not for another repair, but for a permanent position as head of maintenance at the small property management company she had quietly started rebuilding from the ashes of her old life. The salary would cover every bill, Sophie's school supplies, even a college fund one day. But the real gift was the note tucked inside. I whispered that I wanted to believe again. You didn't just fix my fence, Nathan. You fixed the broken parts of me I thought no one could reach. Thank you for teaching me that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest bridge we'll ever cross. Nathan stood there in the driveway, tears mixing with the night air, and for the first time since Emily died he felt the weight on his chest lift. He pulled Claire into a hug that lasted long enough for both of them to understand what was happening. Not romance, not yet, but something deeper. 2 broken people choosing to heal side by side. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Sophie ran through Claire's backyard chasing fireflies while Nathan grilled burgers on the new patio he had built with his own hands. Claire stood beside him, shoulder brushing his, and whispered one final time, I got what I really wanted that stormy day. I got my faith back, and I got you too. Nathan smiled, the kind of smile that reached all the way to his eyes. And I got the courage to accept help when I needed it most. They never called it a fairy tale. They called it real life, the kind where fences fall, hearts break, and strangers show up in the rain. But they also called it proof that second chances aren't given, they're built, one honest repair at a time. And friend, if you're still here with me at the end, I want you to hear the same whisper Claire gave Nathan that very first day. Whatever storm you're standing in right now, whatever fence in your life is falling down, there is someone out there who will stop for you. Maybe it's a stranger. Maybe it's the person you haven't met yet. Maybe it's even you, learning to help yourself. Kindness always comes back around. Accepting it isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. So go out there tomorrow and fix one thing. Believe in one person. Whisper your own truth to the universe. Because you, my friend, are worthy of the same second chance Nathan and Claire found. And that is the most beautiful story of all.